Peter, while we're on that subject and while you're talking about your area, we've been talking mostly about manufacturing, but just quality of life. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the Green Trail and what do you see on tourism? I'll grab this one because it's the trail.
Quality of life is one of the things that Mayo is trading very strongly on, and we have a couple of slides. If we get a chance, we might show them at the end. Just I don't know, as most people in the room, I guess, would have heard of the Wild Atlantic Way. Okay, it's the next kind of generation of where Fáilte Ireland are pushing kind of product and tourism product development in Ireland, and it's basically it's based on the garden route and other international routes, and it's trying to get people out onto the coast. Now, Mayo has a number of things going for it. We have the longest coastline of any county in the country, statistically correct and accurate, and we're getting that out there. And we're trying to position ourselves as the heartbeat of the Wild Atlantic Way. We have had a fantastic success with a thing called the Greenway that you've referred to. It's basically the old railway line that used to link from Westport out to Achill, which has been converted into a cycleway walkway. We talked a little bit about this at lunchtime. When we made the pitch for the funding back in 2009, when there was no funding, and it was very hard to get your hands on any kind of cash to do anything because things had just fallen off a cliff, we kind of gave assurances that the Greenway, if it were invested in, would attract 150,000 people a year. We would have been very happy with half that. Last year, we had recorded 220,000 visitors on it, using it over the course of the year. It's been a phenomenal success, and it's been a success for a number of reasons. One, it's a good product. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. It's attractive, it's off the road, it's quiet, and it works. Secondly, it's owned by the people along the way, because when we got the land and permission to use the land, we did it on the basis of what we call permissive access. In other words, the farmers who had access or ownership of the land gave us permission to use it, so that they now feel that they own it, and that pervades every part of it, and it has become a real driver of growth and visitor numbers in the area.
Thank you. And Mary, with Team Neo, when you talk to prospective manufacturers and companies looking to do investments here in Cleveland, Ohio, what are the type of quality of life attributes that you talk to them about?
Sure. I mean, I think the one thing that you talked about, getting people to move here and then how to get them to leave, our biggest challenge is getting them on the ground. And we're convinced, and I think Ed knows firsthand from Alexander Man Solutions, a company who was looking at the triangle in North Carolina, and they were convinced that they were going to go. And there was somebody here and said, you need to come here, you need to check it out. And just getting people on the ground, they're always amazed. I mean, we had the nickname forever of Mistake on the Lake. Oh, your river caught on fire. I mean, that's, I think we just celebrated the 40th anniversary of that, river catching on fire. I think it's time we put that behind us, I think we can get them here. I mean, if it's sending something on paper, it's easy to say we have this many miles of pathways and greenways and this many golf courses and this many parks. I mean, we've got a national park in our backyard. Again, it's what we take for granted that other people would be so overwhelmed when they see it. So I think it's that balance, that live, work, recreation balance, and we're seeing so much more of it. And we've always wanted that development on the lakefront, and we're seeing that happen. I mean, the redevelopment of the flats. We hear stories, oh, I remember the flats, I used to go there all the time, and it's like, oh, well, it's not the same flats, but it's so much better, and there's so much potential. So I really think getting people on the ground and they walk around just to see. I mean, I think it goes back to people too. I mean, you walk down the street in New York and they say it's one of the loneliest places, not to pick on New York, but nobody's talking to each other. Everyone's got their headphones in or they're looking at their phone, and here there's just a genuine sense of people say hello, people smile when you walk by, and I think it's just that part of the nature of once they're here, you can see all those assets. It's definitely a great selling point.
Ed, maybe we could ask you, Ed Crawford, you've run small, medium, large. How do you find the support system in Cleveland, in counting and so forth?
What seems to me over a long period of time, which is spans 30, 40, 50 years, Cleveland, there's always been an interest here in investing in entrepreneurship, creation of jobs. This is a community that maybe has been entrepreneurial for a long time, maybe starting with Rockefeller, but when you're here in Cleveland with good ideas, the number of what we call angel investors in Cleveland is staggering. And the ability for someone with an idea, with the energy, with the conviction to start a business, their dream. There are a lot of people in this community listening. And they're really listening to invest in the right way. It's not like going to New York and talking to a group of banks where, you know, it's all about money, 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 and you have to sign personally. Cleveland was a wonderful place. When I started my first business in 1962, that was done with totally seed capital. But that exists today. So as a community, for anyone, and particularly when you're trying to accomplish your type of long-term planning, it's here. And the service industries are here, but it is friendly, but definitely there's a sense of entrepreneurship and a sense of people reinvesting in other people's dreams. And that's what sparks Cleveland, and companies start small, like our company, and one day it ends up with 5,000 employees.
You know, Tommy, it was interesting what you said, that you always felt like you were going to be running your own company. And it's, I would just echo what Ed just said. Growing up on the west side of Cleveland, you know, everybody wanted to have that beginning job at the steel mill or whatever, but they always were thinking, I'm going to own my own gas station. I'm going to do something. I'm going to be my own boss. It was, it pervaded through our whole neighborhood. And I don't, you know, and I don't, after living in Boston and living in San Francisco and traveling the world, I don't fully feel it the same way. You know, Ireland, I've been to Ireland a few times, and it's stronger there, I feel. But maybe you can tell us how that feeling is for you, and also maybe you can tell us a little about your experience in Latin America.
I suppose being self-employed isn't probably suitable to everyone, first of all. Certain people are destined to be self-employed, other people aren't. And there's nothing wrong with not being self-employed. But the person that's self-employed or goes out and starts their own business, they have a certain type of mindset, or they have a certain type of ambition. I suppose some people see the risks, other people don't see the risks. I suppose I'm the one that, in other words, the day I gave up the day job was the happiest day of my life, in the sense that I knew it was my own destiny after that. I made the decision. If I make a mistake, that's okay, I learn from it. It's part of the learning process. So I suppose that's really where the line has to be cut on the ground of whether you want to create your own destiny or whether you don't want to create your own destiny. You live the dream, and I suppose here, coming into the American market, it is the land of opportunity. There is the scaling factor in it. We're going from a population of 4.5 million into an infinite marketplace. The industry that we've picked is a global industry. Waste is created all over the world. Everyone produces waste, so therefore everyone's a potential customer. So yeah, that's, I suppose, really the reasons why I do it. I suppose when I looked at setting up the business originally in DC, I was controlling it from Ireland. I put our own employee, I hired a guy up there and put him on the ground. The difference between coming from DC down here is, number one, when I was up in DC, I was controlling from Ireland, so therefore, by the time 3 o'clock came in the day over here, I was fast asleep in Ireland, so you couldn't control what was going on. Down here, by partnering with John and Dan, they're in the same position as I am. They wanted to succeed. So now, that has shared the risk. They're driving the driving force here. They see the potential, and that's why they're into the idea. And it's the perfect, as I said already, it's the perfect market when there is such a amount of glass going to landfill. Another thing I noticed, the first thing when I arrived into here this week, and in any hotel, you see this beautiful building. When you're driving in, the next thing you see this big dirty dumpster left open, with the lids open and waste standing out outside the building. And that's everywhere over here. Back home, you don't see that anymore. It's tidy, it's seen, you know, waste is something that has a value. So people turn it into money. Does that cover what we've spoken there?
Sure, maybe about
Well,
South America.
Yeah, it was just another thing that just in relation to the different, I suppose, Ireland and the west of Ireland. We're blessed in Mayo, I suppose, to have number one, with great people, The other thing I would have, and I always say he's probably one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met and seen, was Monsignor Horton. To have an airport on our doorstep makes our marketplace so easy to get to. I've often left our yard in the morning at 8:30 and been middle of London by 11. Thanks to that man. We can ship product anywhere around Ireland for €48. We can ship product anywhere around the UK for €100. We can ship a container load of product to Cleveland for approximately $3,800, and we'll have it here in just under 14 days. So the world is now a small place, and that's how I see it's so easy to get around it.
You know, a lot of these points that Ed and you and others have mentioned on this panelist is you have to have optimism. You have to, some people see problems, other people see solutions. And it sounds like you're doing a nice job finding solutions to the problems.
Absolutely, and the beauty of our business is every problem creates a challenge, but it creates a revenue. Because one person's problem is our solution. So that's, I suppose, why we're successful is we do see the solution immediately, and we try and capitalize on it.
Thank you. You know, speaking of problems, you talk about regulations, and we've been talking about here about manufacturing and other services, but you know, it's chemicals. You think about chemicals of what you can use today versus 100 years ago is totally different, and it's why, you know, we spent so much time cleaning up some plants from the 1800s. Not all the chemicals that you can use today, or back then you can do today, and part of it is the changing regulations of what you can and can't do. And John, I know your product with it's got some chemicals in it, and you know, you proved in Massachusetts and others, and just how well have you been able to get through some of those problems?
Right. So it's a good point, because right now with MACE, we have to have DOD, DOT, Homeland Security, and EPA certifications. And so that challenge does at times become difficult, but working once again, like in Cleveland, there's a local law firm, McMahon DeGullis. They're environmental lawyers. They helped us work through the process. We were able to get through a lot of EPA regulations very quickly. So it was a big benefit to the area, because then at a lower cost, you know, we were able to do it. Because I started with the DC, like Tommy, I started with the DC attorney, and it was just $500 and nothing, to be honest with you. And here it was half that, and twice, half the time we were able to achieve our goals. And you know, what you were talking about earlier, Sean, I think is a good point, is like, I think Mr. Crawford, when we met with him in his cafeteria one day, he talked about just how you look at a business, how you evaluate it, and what we try and do is look at, whether it's security or waste management, the return on investment. Some people look at it as a necessary evil. We try and turn that equation around and say, okay, how can you make, like Tommy and I like to joke, how can you make a bit of quid on it, you know, in order to turn it into something? And like with recycling, everything can be recycled, right? So right now at Cleveland Browns Stadium, they are taking all the food waste, measuring it, and then they're either donating it, or they're looking at making less hamburgers or hot dogs or whatever it is for the next game. Next step with us is we're going to talk to them through Dan Hanna about recycling all the trash. Like after one football match, they create 7 days worth of trash. So if you think about it, one game, 75,000 screaming fans, 7 days worth of pickup of trash. Well, that's just a huge opportunity. And then when I sell them cameras and some video equipment, we look at the data analytics to say, hey, can you move people into the stadium quicker by looking at the cameras to say, okay, hey, most people want to go through the north gate. All right, let's expand the size of the north gate. And these are things that I think Mr. Crawford looks at when he buys a business to say, okay, what can I do? How can I manage it? And how can I make it more efficient? So not only he can, you know, make a bit of quid on it, but then the people can prosper within that business. One of the things I'd ask Peter, because I think it was a great segue too, is the roads here, what Tommy had said, and now we have, through the Port Authority, containers going directly to Antwerp and to Rotterdam and delivering Cleveland. I think you talk a little bit about the roads and the infrastructure that's been built in Ireland now, because God love my dear mother, when she'd go back to Ireland, it would take her almost 3 days to get back to the airport. Because my Uncle Jack would leave, pick her up, and then they'd take dirty roads all the way up to Dublin to get back out or get a flight out of Shannon. But they talk about the non-connection and some of the infrastructure now that's built, because we are, as Mace, looking at, through the cooperation of building a distribution center in Mayo or Ireland to distribute to the EU. Because of some of the regulations, it'd be a lot easier to make it there.
But just to pick up on that point, we talked this morning about Knock Airport and the airport, and Tommy talked about Monsignor Horan. He definitely was one of a kind and of an entrepreneurial spirit that is quite rare. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the videos, but there's a very famous one of a news broadcast where he's asked the camera what he's doing, and he says, "Shh, we're building an airport, but don't tell the government, they don't know yet." And it wasn't entirely untrue. We're very proud of the airport as a people, by the way, just to put that out there. It's the people's airport. It's very unique. I happen to serve on the board because of the job that I do, but it's the people's airport. And Joe Kennedy, who's former mayor person of the year, is the chairman of the board. You meet him later on this evening and tomorrow at the dinner. But so every effort that can possibly be made to make connections into the airport is being done. And we are working very hard to try and get transatlantic flights into Knock. It's unlikely to happen this year, perhaps next year. Certainly will happen as the market changes. We won't get the established carriers in, I don't think, but we will get new carriers, and we get them from, as the model changes, as Ryanair talk about getting into that market. We think that's where our opportunity will come from. But on the roads front, I just want to say two things on the roads. They have improved remarkably. We've just signed a contract as the country, as a national contract, for the final leg of the motorway from Cork to Tuam, which will take a big chunk of that congestion around Galway out. We're working on the N5. There's a little bit in Roscommon that we have to get through, but when Mayo eventually takes over Roscommon and runs it the way that it should be done this summer, and Balladrine has been bypassed. And finally, if you look at the distribution out of the county, we have two global corporations. We have Sullivan that we've talked about, and they ship all of the Botox made on the planet from Westport, and it doesn't bother them terribly much now. That's a low weight, high value product. But on the other end of the spectrum, the largest Coca-Cola manufacturing plant on the planet is in Ballina, and they ship a lot of bulky product out of Ballina, and they get it all over the globe from there. So really, it's not an issue as it used to be in the past.
And Baxter, Baxter Healthcare in Castlebar is the biggest exporter of water out of Ireland through their produce. So again, by being in the west of Ireland, it hasn't hindered their distribution channels.